I was born in Donelson Hospital. Spent my summers on Old Hickory Lake. Got my local stories from news diva Demetria Kalodimos. Played Little League at Mount Juliet Little League. I even graduated high school on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry. I knew the words to Rocky Top before I even knew how to read. As a kid, I ate my weight in moon pies and Goo Goo Clusters and fried just about everything. In short, Tennessee, it's in my blood. I spent over 2 decades in the state, living and learning and a lot of laughing. Tennessee's also where I developed my early love for politics, something that's stuck with me throughout my adult life. Not sure why, but I just found it all thrilling. In the fall, when I'd see the yard signs go up, I'd be intrigued by the local slate of candidates or whatever issue was on the ballot. Or whenever I'd hear my mother, who was very involved in local school board politics, talk about this candidate or that issue, I'd find myself unduly interested in topics that were well beyond my understanding, but somehow still registered to my ears. In this political world, one name that was omnipresent was May Beavers. Ms. Beavers, who hailed from my area, always seemed to be running for something. And even though I declared my allegiance to the Democrats, and to Fleetwood Mac, incidentally enough, during the 1992 Clinton campaign, I knew that Ms. Beavers was a Republican, I still always found myself intrigued by her candidacy. As someone who was a feminist long before I was an LGBT activist, I love that my small town had such a strong and viable candidate in Beavers. She won elections, so she was clearly doing something right. So that's why it pains me, literally pains me, to see the same May Beavers, who's now a Tennessee state senator, leading the current charge to keep discrimination alive and quite unwell in the volunteer state. As you might have heard, Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam just signed Senator Beavers' bill that does nothing more than eliminates county and city anti-discrimination laws. A bill that was purposely designed to remove protections for LGBT Tennesseans. A bill that is now a law. In a state where there are no sexual orientation or gender identity protections. Tennessee's GOP-controlled legislature, led by Beavers, has just turned a blind eye to what I know to be a very real problem. The problem of anti-LGBT discrimination that still plagues the state. And honestly, they didn't even really turn a blind eye to it. They've actually emboldened it. For the past decade, I've lived in New York City. Now, there are a number of reasons why I live here. Excitement, Broadway, good bagels. And I always knew I wanted to live here in Manhattan. Literally, when I watched Sesame Street as a child, I felt some strong pull to the gritty city. So, regardless of where I grew up, my personality most likely would have still led me here. But that being said, I also did know, quite plainly, from a very early age, that I really had no choice but to eventually leave Tennessee. Something there always told me from some of my earliest memories that my future, if I wanted to live it honestly, just couldn't play out in the state of my birth. And unfortunately, the bill that May Beavers from my hometown just put into action, and that the legislature and the governor just put into law, well, that's just more cultivation of this very climate that drove me out of Tennessee. Or not even drove me out, but made me always feel just a little bit uneasy. More uneasy than I certainly should have. Look, I genuinely love the state. I love Tennessee. I will tell anyone who listens that the volunteer state is the most gorgeous one I've ever visited. And I'm proud to have come from there. But it would just be disingenuous for me, someone who has experienced the state so closely and intimately, to deny the state's obvious problem accepting LGBT people. I have the scars to prove it. I have bonds that are far more strained than they should be because of this ongoing problem just incorporating LGBT people into the state's normalcy. Memories that I have are weightier than they should be because of this stupid nonsense. And I have a home state that I feel much less comfortable revisiting than I should, all because of the kind of anti-LGBT nonsense that elected representatives of the people are still putting into state policy here in 2011 America. Look, I will never, ever, ever lose hope that the state that gave me so much will smooth over the path it lays out for LGBT people. But right now, there on Rocky Top, the dirt is just too rocky. By far.
That's why all the folks on Rocky Top get their corn from a jar. Rocky Top, you